You have been known to be a Republican in the past, as best I can recall. It strikes me as we go into this presidential election, things are a bit different these days in various respects. One could say that both the Democrats and the Republicans seem to be flirting with populism. How much difference is there between these two alternatives today as opposed to 10, 15 years ago?
David, first of all, yes, I am a Republican. I'm still a Republican. I am a limited government, fiscal conservative, pro-free market Republican. And I do think that when you're looking at the two parties from a business standpoint, you got the best shot at having advocates for an expanded free market system, for lower regulations, lower taxes, as a Republican supporter. You're not going to see that with the Democrats. So there's no question. I think you are right. Donald Trump has transformed the Republican Party. It is much more of a populist party now with a lot of nationalistic tendencies.
But there was a time that was thought, whether fairly or unfairly, the Republican Party tended to be more pro-business, Democrats not so much. But Donald Trump has certainly not gone out of his way to be a friend to business, at least explicitly.
Well, I think that, again, some of there are particular industries, particular companies that he has a beef with, and we've seen that sort of play out in his prior administration. And so I suspect if we see another Trump administration that you're going to, again, see some of that tension between certain industries, let's say the tech industry, and some others that he's picked out for particular ire. But on the whole, if you look at what he did policy-wise from tax standpoint or regulatory standpoint, he's much more grounded in who he is as a business person than any Democratic nominee, Joe Biden or otherwise, would ever be.
What about trade? Because certainly Donald Trump came in and imposed a lot of tariffs. Including, I would say, some extraordinary ones under Section 301, which hadn't been used that much before that. And that was not always friendly to business, some of the trade restrictions he imposed. Is there a big difference between Democrats and Republicans right now on the use of trade protection devices?
Well, it's interesting to see those trade policies that were put in place by President Trump have really been continued by President Biden. So there really hasn't been much of a shift. I think U.S. leadership in terms of trade, whether it's more trade deals or any kind of deepening of those relationships on a multilateral basis, even a bilateral basis, I would say is hard to come by now. Free trade is not necessarily something that rallies either party. And I do think you're going to see a continued increase in protectionism. You've heard the discussion that President Trump has put forward about increasing tariffs 10% across the board. He's even mentioned a 60% imposition of tariffs on goods coming in from China. So I do think that you're seeing a ratcheting up of that kind of rhetoric that's going to manifest itself in some policy.
We've got a lot of geopolitical situations going on. We've got a war in Europe. We've got a war in Gaza, really, with Israel and Hamas. We've got tensions over in Asia as well. As you talk to Moelis clients, is the issue of geopolitics rising on the agenda as they talk to you? Is it more concerned today than it was 5 years ago?
Certainly. It's a topic of discussion all the time, and especially with multinationals, if they're either European, Western-based, American multinationals, very concerned with what's going on in the Middle East. I spent a lot of time there, and certainly it's one of the most active places on the globe right now in terms of transactions and growth-oriented policies. But on the same hand, people are looking to see, hey, what's going on over in the Levant with Hamas and Israel, and is that going to spread? And I think thus far we've seen that not spread. I don't think Iran wants to see it spread. So yes, geopolitics is a discussion throughout most boardrooms and conversations that I'm having. But I also think, it's one election, because there's a lot of elections globally this year. One election matters most, and that's here.
Turn to the fiscal side for a moment. There's a lot of concern about what we're doing in terms of borrowing money. The annual deficit where it is and the debt that's accumulating. It's accumulating quite quickly, I must say. I don't hear much out of either the most likely candidates, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden right now, about really getting our arms around that.
Well, you asked about geopolitics and whether that's a topic of discussion. Yes, I do think more relevant to the deal world, which is what we do at Moelis, is the interest rates. And it's been very interesting to see the reaction of the markets after Chairman Powell has pretty much indicated that the time for raising rates is subsided, and now the market is trying to assess when there will be a cut, whether we'll be at this level for longer. But really, very few people are talking about increasing rates this year, which is helping, I think, the overall investor outlook for more transactions, more deals to come. And you know, when you look at Washington and how they view interest rates, if the market's saying, hey, we can maybe live with some more certainty now at these levels, the problem is in Washington, these levels are very expensive given the debt load that has been undertaken. And you're right, neither Joe Biden or Donald Trump are talking about how do we solve this fiscal situation we've got. And obviously, at the core of it for the federal government is the increase in expense at the entitlement level. And that's a really tough and tricky political minefield.
One of the things that business craves is certainty, predictability, whatever it is, high, low, whatever it is, as long as we know what it is. I'm going to pick on your old shop now, the House of Representatives, for a moment, because there hasn't been a lot of certainty coming out of Congress, and particularly, I would say, on the House of Representatives side. How large a factor is that in business planning? How can you plan ahead when you don't know? We don't even know we're going to fund the government right now.
You know, David, it is amazing to see how many years we've lived with that kind of uncertainty and, let's just say, alleged dysfunction in Washington. It is pretty extraordinary, at least a decade, if not more. There has been this type of uncertainty with whether Congress is going to be able to even come up with a spending plan. We are facing, in short order, within a week, the potential shutdown of the government, and then a week after that, a larger potential shutdown of the government. And that is combined with the press that the Senate has now put on the House of Representatives on the foreign aid package. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but what I see in the markets today and the business world is almost trying to tune out that noise, because people feel like at the end of the day, Washington will figure it out. And I do believe, given my experience in that town, that ultimately on the floor of the House of Representatives, it's 218 that matters. That's the majority number to get anything passed. And well over 218 members want to avoid any long shutdown or any real catastrophe. So I do think in the end, markets are right that it'll get there, but it is uncertain, so it doesn't help things.